Some people believe disasters are random, others think they're fate. But after what happened to me, I started wondering if someone always knows they're coming. I never believed in omens, not ghosts, not psychics, not curses. I believed in bad luck and coincidence. That changed on a rainy Tuesday morning. I live in Columbus, Ohio. At the time, I worked as a maintenance supervisor for a large office complex downtown. My mornings were painfully ordinary. Coffee from the same gas station, the same traffic, the same elevator ride to the 8th floor. Until the day I noticed him. He was standing across the street outside the coffee shop. Black coat. No umbrella despite the heavy rain. Hands folded behind his back. Completely motionless. At first I thought he was waiting for someone. But something felt wrong. Everyone around him hurried through the rain, yet nobody acknowledged he existed. He wasn't looking at traffic. He wasn't watching pedestrians. He was staring directly at the office building where I worked. I remember thinking, that's creepy. Then my phone rang. My manager needed me upstairs immediately because an air conditioning unit had failed. I walked away without giving the man another thought. Exactly 27 minutes later, a delivery truck lost control at the intersection. It smashed through several parked cars before crashing into the front entrance of our building. Glass exploded everywhere. Concrete collapsed onto the sidewalk. 3 people died instantly. More than 20 were injured. If my manager hadn't called me upstairs, I would have been standing exactly where the truck hit. For weeks, investigators blamed brake failure. The news covered it non-stop. Eventually, life returned to normal. So did mine. Until 6 months later. I was driving home after visiting my sister. Traffic slowed near an overpass because road construction had reduced the highway to 1 lane. Cars barely moved. While waiting, I glanced toward the service road running beside the highway. There he was, the same man. Same black coat, same expressionless face, same impossible stillness. He wasn't watching traffic, he was watching us. His eyes slowly moved from car to car until they stopped on mine. Every hair on my arms stood up. The light changed. Traffic started moving again. I checked my mirror. He was gone. Not walking away, not crossing the road. Gone. 10 minutes later, a fuel tanker 2 miles ahead exploded after colliding with another truck. The blast caused a chain reaction involving nearly 40 vehicles. Smoke covered the highway. People abandoned their cars and ran. By pure coincidence, I'd stopped at a gas station 5 minutes earlier because I suddenly wanted another coffee. That delay kept me far enough back to avoid the pileup. Coincidence. Again. That's what I kept telling myself. A few days later, I mentioned the strange man to my coworker Daniel. He laughed. Until I described his face. Daniel's smile disappeared. He quietly asked, "Did he have gray eyes?" I nodded. "What about a scar above his left eyebrow?" I froze. "How do you know that?" Daniel looked genuinely disturbed. He told me something he'd never shared with anyone. 3 years earlier, before a warehouse explosion killed 8 workers, he'd seen the exact same man standing outside the building the day before. Motionless. Watching. Daniel thought he'd imagined it. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he whispered, "Don't tell anyone." Of course, I told people. Most laughed. Some rolled their eyes. A few thought we were traumatized and connecting unrelated events. Then something happened that made everything worse. A local television station aired security footage while reporting on another accident. The video showed pedestrians crossing an intersection moments before a city bus lost control. Everyone was running, except one person, standing perfectly still on the sidewalk. Black coat, hands behind his back, watching. The footage lasted only 4 seconds. The station never mentioned him, but Daniel called me immediately. I saw him. I know. Tell me that's not the same guy. It is. We started researching. Online archives, old newspapers, forums, accident reports. We searched everything. Eventually, we found something impossible. Photos from disasters decades apart contained someone who looked exactly the same. A factory fire in 1989. A bridge collapse in 1997. A stadium stampede in 2008. Always distant. Always watching. Always wearing black. Never appearing frightened. Never helping anyone. Just waiting. The strangest part? Nobody else seemed interested. Whenever we pointed him out, people shrugged. Some couldn't even see him until we circled his location. It was like the human brain refused to notice him. Underscore Daniel became obsessed. He created folders, timelines, maps. He believed the man wasn't causing disasters. He believed he was observing them, like someone checking whether events happened exactly as expected. I laughed at the idea, until Daniel disappeared. Underscore. He failed to show up for work one Monday. Nobody worried initially. Then Tuesday passed. Wednesday. Police entered his apartment. Everything looked normal. Wallet, phone charger, laptop, coffee still sitting on the kitchen counter. But Daniel had vanished. Security footage from his apartment building showed him leaving around midnight. He walked toward the parking lot, stopped, looked across the street. Then, the camera briefly glitched. Less than 1 second. When the image returned, Daniel was gone. No car, no footsteps, nothing. Police assumed he left with someone outside camera view. I knew better. Across the street, barely visible, was a dark figure wearing a black coat. Months passed. I forced myself to stop thinking about it. Eventually, life became normal again. Then my company transferred me to another office. New city, new building, fresh start. During lunch on my first day, coworkers discussed an apartment fire that had happened nearby years earlier. One employee mentioned something strange. "My uncle survived it," she said. "He always talks about some creepy guy standing outside before it started." I nearly dropped my coffee. What did he look like? She described him perfectly. Underscore. That night I couldn't sleep, so I drove around the city. Around 2 in the morning, I reached Riverside Bridge. Nobody was around, except him, standing beneath a streetlight, watching the bridge. I stopped my car. For the first time, I decided to approach him. Every instinct screamed not to, but curiosity won. As I crossed the empty sidewalk, he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react. When I was only 15 feet away, he slowly turned toward me. His face looked ordinary, not evil, not threatening, just completely emotionless. His gray eyes reflected the streetlight without blinking. I forced myself to speak. "Who are you?" Silence. "What do you want?" "Nothing." Then, he smiled. Not happily, not maliciously, just enough to make my stomach tighten. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You shouldn't be here tomorrow." That was it. He turned around, walked beneath the bridge. I chased him immediately. There was nowhere for him to go. No exits, no hiding places. Yet when I reached the other side, the tunnel was empty. Underscore. The next morning, police closed Riverside Bridge. At 9:14 a.m., a support beam failed. Nearly 200 feet of roadway collapsed into the river below. Multiple vehicles plunged into the water. News helicopters circled overhead. Rescue boats filled the river. I watched everything from my apartment television, unable to breathe. Because I'd been standing on that bridge, less than 12 hours earlier. Underscore. After that, I stopped telling people. No one would believe me anyway. Years passed. The sightings ended, or so I thought. Last October, I accepted a new job. Different company, different state, completely different life. On my first morning, I parked across from the office building. Employees filled the sidewalks. People laughed. Cars honked. Everything felt normal. Until I looked across the street. Standing beside a newspaper box was a man in a black coat, hands behind his back, watching the building. Then, very slowly, he looked directly at me and smiled. I never went inside. 3 hours later, an explosion ripped through the building after a gas leak ignited during maintenance work. The news called it a tragic accident. Investigators blamed old pipes. They never mentioned the man. They never do. Sometimes, when another disaster appears on television, I don't watch the firefighters, or the smoke, or the destruction. I pause the footage, then I search the background, because every now and then, standing quietly where almost nobody notices, he's there, watching, waiting, as if he's making sure reality unfolds exactly the way it was always meant to. I delivered food for almost 4 years, thousands of orders, hundreds of apartment buildings. Most deliveries blur together after a while. But there's one address I remember perfectly, because according to the city, it has never existed. Back in 2022, I was working nights for a food delivery app in Seattle. Night shifts usually paid better. Less traffic, fewer drivers, bigger tips. The only downside was delivering to apartment complexes after midnight. Half the buildings had broken buzzers. The other half looked like something from a horror movie. Still, I never turned down an order. until order #hell 41783. It came in at 11:48 p.m. One large pepperoni pizza, garlic bread, 2 bottled waters. Nothing unusual. The delivery address was 914 Alder Street, Ashcroft Apartments, apartment 407. The tip was unusually high, $40. I accepted without thinking. GPS estimated 9 minutes. Easy money. Underscore. The drive was normal until the final block. My GPS suddenly froze. The route line disappeared. Then the screen went black. I restarted my phone. The map came back, but my location kept jumping, almost like it couldn't decide where I was. Eventually, I spotted the apartment building. Old red bricks, 4 stories, dark windows, only one porch light glowing. Oddly, there wasn't a single car outside. Summers. The building looked abandoned. Paint peeled from every wall. The mailbox doors hung open. Even stranger, there wasn't a single sound. No televisions, no barking dogs, no traffic, nothing. Cities are never completely silent, yet standing there, I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing. Walked toward the entrance. The front door opened before I touched it. No one stood there. I assumed another tenant had just walked inside, so I entered. Immediately, the smell hit me. Dust, old wood, and something damp, like a basement that hadn't been opened for years. The lobby lights flickered. The directory listed apartments 101 through 406. I checked it twice. There was no apartment 407. I checked my phone. The order still clearly read, 407. I contacted the customer. No answer. A text arrived seconds later. Take the elevator. There was only one elevator. Ancient. The metal doors rattled as they opened. Inside, there were buttons for floors 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That didn't make sense. From outside, the building only had 4 floors. I actually stepped back outside just to check. 4 floors, no 5th. Yet inside, the elevator definitely had one. Underscore. I told myself maybe the ground floor wasn't counted. Old buildings sometimes did that, so I pressed 5. The doors closed. The elevator began moving. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, it kept going. Longer than it should have. The movement lasted nearly 30 seconds, far too long for one extra floor. Finally, the doors opened. Underscore. The hallway looked wrong. Not scary. Just impossible. The ceiling seemed unusually high. The lights glowed a pale yellow. Every apartment door was identical. No decorations. No welcome mats. No signs anyone actually lived there. Yet I could hear faint whispers. Not from one apartment. From all of them. 7 call. Apartment 407 sat at the very end. The door was already slightly open. I knocked. No response. I knocked again. A voice quietly said, "Come in." Underscore. Against every instinct, I pushed the door open. The apartment was spotless. Almost too spotless. White walls, white furniture, white curtains. Everything perfectly arranged. A woman sat alone at the dining table. She looked to be around 60. Gray hair, blue sweater, completely expressionless. She smiled politely. You made good time. Her voice sounded flat, like someone reading from a script. Underscore. I handed her the pizza. She didn't touch it. Instead, she asked, "Did anyone see you come here?" I laughed awkwardly. "I don't think so." She nodded slowly. "Good." Silence filled the room. Then she asked another question. "What year is it?" I assumed she was joking. 2022. She stared at me, then whispered, "So it finally happened." I felt every muscle in my body tighten. What happened? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the hallway behind me. Her smile disappeared. You need to leave. Underscore. The apartment door slammed shut on its own. Not hard, just slowly, as if someone had gently closed it. The woman suddenly looked terrified. They know you're here. Who? She stood up so quickly her chair fell over. Go. Underscore. At that exact moment, every apartment door in the hallway opened. At once. Not one after another. Simultaneously. I heard dozens of footsteps. Slow. Perfectly synchronized. Walking toward apartment 407. Underscore. I didn't wait. I ran. The hallway suddenly felt much longer. The elevator seemed farther away than before. The footsteps behind me never sped up. They didn't need to. They stayed perfectly synchronized. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like soldiers marching. Underscore. I reached the elevator, pressed the button repeatedly. Nothing. The footsteps grew louder. Finally, the doors opened. I jumped inside, hit the ground floor button. As the doors closed, I caught one final glimpse down the hallway. Dozens of people stood perfectly still, watching me. Every face, identical, same age, same expression, same gray eyes. Underscore. The elevator dropped rapidly, much faster than it had climbed. My ears popped, the lights flickered, then everything went completely dark. For 2 seconds, I felt weightless. Then the doors opened. Underscore. I stumbled into the lobby, except it wasn't the same lobby. Dust covered everything. The ceiling had partially collapsed. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. It looked abandoned for decades. I ran outside. The building looked exactly as before, except the porch light was gone. Underscore. I jumped into my car, locked every door. My phone buzzed. The delivery app displayed order complete, then another notification appeared. Customer rating, /. Beneath it was a message. Thank you for remembering us. Underscore. The next morning, I drove back with my friend Eric. The building was gone. Not demolished. Gone. In its place stood an empty parking lot. Fresh pavement. No construction equipment. No debris. Nothing. Underscore. We asked nearby shop owners. One elderly man frowned. Ashcroft Apartments? He looked confused. That place burned down 30 years ago. My stomach dropped. What? Electrical fire. Whole top floor collapsed. Terrible tragedy. Underscore. He pointed toward the public library. They have old newspaper archives. Underscore. We searched for hours. Finally, we found it. April 1992. Headline: Apartment fire claims 27 lives. The accompanying photo froze my blood. It was the same building, the same entrance, the same windows. Underscore? Then I noticed something else. Standing across the street, barely visible in the newspaper photograph, was a man wearing a black coat, hands behind his back, watching the fire. Understories say, I knew that face. I'd seen it before, online, attached to stories of impossible disasters. The same man. Again. Underscore. Curious. I searched the victim list. Apartment 407. Resident Margaret Ellison, age 63. Declared dead in the fire. I remembered the woman instantly. Gray hair, blue sweater, expressionless smile. Exactly as she'd looked the night before. Someone score, I tried contacting the delivery company. They had no record of order 7783. Support insisted I'd never accepted a delivery at that address. My earnings history skipped directly from order #41782 to #41784. Even stranger, the $40 tip remained in my bank account. No explanation, no transaction history, just $40 extra. I quit delivering food a week later. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd gone somewhere I wasn't supposed to exist. Sometimes I wonder if that building appears only when someone is willing to notice it. Or maybe it never disappeared at all. Maybe it still stands somewhere just outside reality, waiting for another late-night driver, another impossible order, another person curious enough to press the button for a floor that shouldn't exist. And if they do, I hope they never answer when someone inside asks, "What year is it?" If your phone rang at exactly 3:13 every morning, and the person on the other end correctly predicted tomorrow before it happened, how many nights would it take before you answered? I used to think prank calls were harmless, annoying, childish, easy to ignore. That changed during my final semester at college. My name is Ethan, and in the spring of 2024, I was living alone in a small apartment just outside Portland, Oregon. My life was painfully ordinary. Morning classes, part-time job at the campus library, late-night studying. The biggest thing I worried about was passing my final exams. Then my phone rang. Exactly 3:13 a.m. Underscore. I barely opened my eyes. The number on the screen was hidden. No caller ID. I ignored it. It stopped after 5 rings. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. 3:13 a.m. Same hidden number. This time, curiosity won. I answered. For several seconds, There was only static. Then, a calm male voice spoke. You'll spill your coffee at exactly 9:42 tomorrow morning. I frowned. What? Click. The call ended. Underscore. I laughed about it the next day. Until 9:42 a.m. I reached for my coffee in the campus library. A student accidentally bumped my chair. The cup tipped over. Coffee poured across my notes. I stared at the clock mounted above the checkout desk. 9:42. It had to be coincidence. Nothing more. Underscore. The following night, 3:13 a.m. I answered immediately. The same voice said, Your professor will cancel tomorrow's afternoon lecture. Then the line went dead. The next afternoon, my professor emailed the class. Food poisoning. Lecture canceled. Again. Exactly as predicted. Underscore. Over the next 2 weeks, the calls continued. Every night, always at 3:13 a.m., the predictions started small. Someone would wear a bright yellow jacket. The vending machine would stop working. A fire alarm would go off because someone burned popcorn in the dorms. Every prediction came true. Every single one. Not once was the caller wrong. Then the predictions became personal. Don't take Oak Street tomorrow. I ignored it. The next afternoon, a construction crane collapsed across Oak Street. No one died. But traffic cameras showed my usual route completely destroyed. Had I driven that way, I would have been there. Underscore fear replaced curiosity. I went to the police. The officer listened politely, then smiled. Someone's messing with you. They traced the call. No result. According to their equipment, the call wasn't coming from a cell phone or a landline. It had no identifiable source. Underscore I changed my phone number. The next night, at exactly 3:13 a.m., my new phone rang. Hidden number. Same voice. You can't change this. Underscore. I threw the phone into a drawer. Bought another one. New SIM card. New carrier. 3 nights later, the call returned. Same time. Same voice. You'll keep trying. Underscore. Sleep became impossible. Every night I waited. Every morning, I replayed the words in my head. Then one night, the caller said something different. Tomorrow your roommate will die. I froze. I don't have a roommate. Silence. Then the voice quietly replied. You used to. The call ended. Underscore. That made no sense. I had lived alone for nearly a year. Still, the words stayed with me. The next day, I received a phone call from my mother. She sounded shaken. She'd found an old storage box while cleaning the attic. Inside was a newspaper clipping. A photograph of me, age 6, standing beside another little boy. I'd completely forgotten him. His name was Noah. We'd been inseparable as children. He drowned during a family camping trip when we were 7. My mother had packed away every reminder because I blamed myself for years. My chest tightened. The caller hadn't been talking about college. He'd been talking about my childhood. The predictions stopped being warnings. They became instructions. Don't answer the red door. Leave class early. Throw away the blue notebook. I obeyed every one. Nothing bad happened. At least, nothing I could see. Underscore my best friend Lily finally confronted me. You've changed. You barely sleep. You jump every time your phone vibrates. I almost told her everything. Instead, I lied. It's stress. She didn't believe me. Underscore 3 nights later, the phone rang. The voice sounded different, more urgent. You have to stop answering. I frowned. What? If you keep listening. The line crackled violently. You'll become me. The call disconnected. For the first time, the voice sounded afraid. Underscore. The next morning, I visited the phone company. An engineer checked every record tied to my number. Nothing. No incoming calls existed at 3:13 a.m. According to the network, my phone had never rung. Underscore I started recording the calls. Or at least, I tried. Every recording contained only static. No voice, no words, just white noise lasting exactly 33 seconds. Underscore. Then came the call I'll never forget. The voice said, tomorrow at 5:16 p.m., someone will ask you one question. What question? Have we met before? And don't answer. The next day, I left campus at exactly 5 o'clock. At 5:16 p.m., an elderly man walking his dog stopped beside me. He smiled politely. Excuse me. My blood ran cold. Haven't we met before? I turned and walked away without saying a word. As I looked back, he wasn't watching me. He was smiling at my reflection in a store window. Underscore. That night, the voice whispered, good. Underscore. A week later, I decided I'd had enough. At 3:12 a.m., I sat with my phone already in my hand. The second it rang, I shouted, "Who are you?" Silence. Then, the voice answered, "I'm you." I laughed nervously. "No. You just haven't become me yet." Underscore. I demanded proof. The caller sighed, then calmly listed details no stranger could know. The scar beneath my left knee from falling off my bike at age 12. The password hidden inside an old notebook under my bed. The letter my father wrote before leaving when I was 9. Things I'd never told anyone. Nubulik. My hands were shaking. How is this possible? The voice answered quietly. I'm calling from 11 years ahead. I couldn't breathe. Underscore. You won't believe me. You don't have to. But tomorrow, you'll find a photograph inside your library locker. There are only 2 people in it. You and me. Underscore. The next afternoon, I unlocked my locker. Inside was an old Polaroid. Me, standing beside a man who looked 20 years older. His face was tired, his hair streaked with gray, but it was unmistakably me. Written across the back, in my own handwriting, don't answer the first call. Underscore. That made no sense. I'd already answered dozens of them. That night, I confronted the voice. What first call? Long silence. Then, the caller whispered, You think these are the first calls? They aren't. Underscore. My heart nearly stopped. What do you mean? You've done this before. Many times. Underscore. The static grew louder. The voice struggled to speak. Every time you answer, everything starts over. The line suddenly cleared. For one terrifying second, I heard dozens of overlapping versions of my own voice. Older, younger, angry, terrified, all repeating the same sentence. Don't answer tomorrow. Unders. Har. The phone went dead. The clock read 3:14 a.m. Underscore. I stayed awake until sunrise. At exactly 9 a.m., I decided I was finished. I bought a new phone, destroyed the old one, changed my number, moved to another apartment, transferred colleges, started over. For 6 months, nothing happened. I finally believed it was over. Underscore. Then, last October, my new phone rang. Exactly 3:13 a.m. Hidden number. I stared at the screen for almost a minute. It kept ringing. Then, it stopped. A voicemail appeared. I never answered the call. But curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. For several seconds, only static. Then my own voice said, If you're hearing this, you finally listened. There was a pause. Then one last sentence. One I still think about every night before I go to sleep. Now make sure the next version of us never answers.